Hello, I'm Beth Kulk. I'm here today as your instructor on Chapter 7 for the marketing plan. My background is that I have been in business for over 30 years. I currently am a clinic manager for the University of Wisconsin, UW Health, and work with primary care and specialty clinics. So I'm here today as an instructor for Concordia and have taught the undergraduate marketing class for maybe 2 or 3 years, and some of you may have been in my classes. So today we'll be speaking about the marketing plan and how important it is. Before we even start today on Chapter 7, I want everybody to remember that the most important thing when we do start a small business, etc., is that don't forget what we're doing in the marketing plan. First of all, our number one thing is to make money. We want to make money. Don't lose sight of the marketing project. And then as we think about marketing, we also have to be thinking about an exit strategy. As you're marketing your product, maybe your exit strategy is 30 years from now, or maybe your exit strategy is that you have such a great product that potentially your exit strategy will be to sell that product. So we'll start there. In our objectives today, our first objectives that we're going to look at is to look at the small business marketing plan and also to identify the components for a formal marketing plan. And there'll be 3 components that we'll be discussing. We'll also discuss the nature and the market research process and define market segmentation, and there's different types of segmentation, and then the different methods in order to do a sales forecasting. To begin our class today, let's talk a little bit about just small businesses and where we're going with those. One of the subjects in your text that they talked to you about looking at was actually the Spira footwear. And if you go online and you can look that up, there was something that I thought was really great about this small business. If you look at their website, and you could pull that up right now while we're on, you'll see that it's selling athletic shoes for all ages. But one of the things that it does very nicely is it sorts very easily. It has for different types of customers that are going in there, and it's got not only just for running, but for dress and casual, etc. So they're looking at good shoes for people's feet in this small business. The small business has several activities that they have to look at, and that business would be looking at the activities for a marketing strategy, the target, and their customer and customer satisfaction. So as we look at a business marketing plan or small, those activities are very important. When we look at that marketing activity, we want them to be, the marketing activities should be easily identified. As you can see here on the slide, the identification of that target market, determining the market's potential, and preparing and communicating and delivering satisfaction to that target market. So as we go on to the next slide, you'll see that we are going to look at how do we even get a product out there. There are 3 levels to a product. And I decided today that we'd take an easy core product that we have or a need of the customer, and that need might be particularly getting places. As a person driving here to tape the video, I needed to get from point A to point B. So the core need of the customer is getting someplace. So as we look at that, the actual product or service could be a bus or a train or a metro or a bike or by walking. If we look even further, I own my own car, and I have that freedom. The next thing, if we look at the augmentation of the product, that's how it gets a little bit better. Well, I buy my own car. My first car was a small little Honda. Now, as I go further, I want the Lexus instead of the Honda. So we've augmented the product, so the product is even better and more comfort. So as we look at this, so you can look at your product, it's the need of the consumer, and then how are we going to hit those different targets. So that's how we're going to start our conversation today. The next thing we're going to talk about is the 3 different marketing philosophies and why it makes a difference. Now, there's a different type of philosophy that's called production-oriented. And as we look at this, I was trying to think about how would a production-oriented product look? What have you and I seen advertised? And one of the things that I came up with my husband was some of these exercise programs. You know, that's a production-oriented, where it's related to buy my tape and you'll exercise. That's the production. It's also my husband was telling, it's called a PX90, and apparently that's some kind of special equipment that you can bring in your home, but it's a rigorous workout, but it has to be the commitment of the customer. But that's by production. They're just looking at production. The second sales or marketing strategy could be sales oriented, and that particular process is that the sales is over production efficiencies and customer preferences. So I was trying to think, what is that? And I'm thinking that maybe all of the cell phones that are out there right now. I can give you this cell phone that's touch tone, or you can search any place on the internet, and it's all on the sales. How can I sell this to you? You want to come and get my Apple one, or you can get my, is it an Android phone, or the BlackBerry. These are all on sales oriented. You know, if you come into US Cellular, you'll only have those to choose from, and those people are sales oriented to meet your needs. And the best choice, if we look at it, is a consumer oriented, or the right choice, and where all the marketing efforts begin and end with the customer, and they focus on the customer needs. And as we look at this, we can look at beds, shoes, cars. We can look at different types of philosophies in marketing. So we're going to focus today specifically on the consumer-oriented process. So this takes us back to our microeconomics when we really look at this. And we look at this for the state of the competition, the production focus, and the focus on the present. So let's take us back to our microeconomics, which you guys all took the class in order to be here. And we have to look at the different things that are happening in the market. First of all, the changing of technology, globalization. We have to see what kind of regulations or deregulations are on the market, the privatization of our product, the consumer empowerment, and the customization. How much do we have to customize our product? The heightened competition. Can somebody else converge on us? What is the possibility in the industry? What is the industry looking at? And the retail transformation. How are we going to retail it? Are we going to go on the e-commerce or however? And disintermediation, which is the moving of our funds. How are we going to build it? Are we going to move our funds from point A to point B in order to fund this? So these are all things that you have to be looking at when we look at this simple slide. Don't forget your micro and macroeconomics in the process. As we go to the next slide, we are going to talk about the marketing plan. And the marketing plan will have a market analysis, the competition, and the marketing strategy. And you can see here on this particular slide that we're looking at separating it out into kind of 3 sections for our marketing plan. First, we'll start with the market analysis. And as we look at the market analysis, it's literally straightforward. We're going to look at the market, see what's in there, segment it out, do marketing research, and do our sales forecasting. So your market analysis is kind of like your executive summary when you put together a small business plan. The development of a market mix is looking at the combination of the product, the pricing, the promotion, and the distribution of services. So now let's break down a formal marketing plan as we move forward here. So our first thing that we're going to look at is the market analysis and the customer profile. And so we have to have a description in here of what our potential customers are going to be and look at sales forecasts, both pessimistic and optimistic. You don't want to, as a marketing plan, you want to be honest because your plan is putting it together and it's going to be whether or not we're going to be successful. And remember, we want to make money. That's what we have to do and think about our exit strategies. So some of the core concepts that you have to bring in is the needs and the wants of the individual. What are their needs and what are their wants? Then the next one is look at the target marketing and what else is out there, what other offerings and brands are out there, and what will bring value and satisfaction to the patient. That's my healthcare. Is value and satisfaction to the product. And then look at market channels. Can we market with somebody else? And then also look at the supply chain, the competition, and the market environment, and then trying to put our plan together. So as we look at all of this, this puts it down. So as we look at competition, we look at our key management personnel. How are they involved? Can some of our people, some of our best production and best ideas come from the production line? Because those are the people who are working. Listen to those people. Another thing that's important, and we will do this, is we will do a SWOT analysis. And we're actually going to go to the whiteboard and do a SWOT analysis from Toyota. And we're going to look at Toyota right now. And then we have to look at related products being marketed or tested and the likelihood of competitors coming into the market. So we've talked a little bit about that, but that's how our SWOT analysis will evaluate that. So now we've jumped over to the SWOT analysis, and I was trying to decide what we should do for this class as far as a quick SWOT analysis to get us back into the thinking mode of marketing and strategy and analyzing and knowing what we've got going for us. And so because Toyota is a household name, I thought maybe we should take a look at Toyota right now and see where we are from us, if we were Toyota executives, and to see where we were at in the market, and especially with the natural disaster that they've had. So let's take a look at Toyota. And Toyota has some excellent strengths, and it's great. It's got great appeal, as you can see up here, because it knocked off Ford back in 2003. Now, I know that was 8 years ago, but trending is difficult to have. It's still behind General Motors at this time, but it's still doing pretty well. It has a strong history, and we look at that, and an excellent reputation, Toyota does. And they have a lot of diversity, and when I talk about diversity, I talk about the hybrid cars, I talk about the big trucks. They have big trucks that they use for moving equipment, and a lot of large companies uses their trucks for commercial. And then it has the sport utility vehicles out there that may not be as, they don't really like to talk about them, but they still have them out there that aren't as gas efficient. And then they have their Prius. So they've got some great things behind them in strength. The other thing is, when I mention Toyota, you instantly know what it is. It's a household name, and it's got excellent branding. So as we look at Toyota, they've got a lot going for them. But what do they have not going for them when we look at weaknesses? Toyota right now has a huge world market, and we may have an oversupply of cars right now because the Toyotas are lasting a long time, and so the turnover isn't that much. Plus, in order for them, another weakness, to expand their business, it's very expensive to go out and expand, to build a plant. It's not something you do lightly. So that would be a weakness in it. And the third, and the worst thing that happened to poor Toyota is the earthquake over in Japan, where they were making those parts and how that's affecting their business and what's happening during that time. The other thing is that the plants are huge investment, But the labor is a huge investment also too. So when we look at that and we look at those things and the future for them. Can you think of any other weaknesses? Well, I can think of that Ford and GM are looking, we've gotten our government to be involved in Ford and GM to be better about getting hybrids out there, that not only Toyota should be doing it. So we've got some government subsidies that are going to affect Toyota from that perspective and to see where they're going with it. So let's then jump over to the opportunities that Toyota might be looking at. So Toyota has a reputation of being environmental friendly, right? And so their opportunity is, let's take it one step further. Let's take their luxury cars and let's make the luxury car, luxury car environmentally friendly, which they aren't right now. So you look at your Lexus and everything. Now, what's another weakness? I'm going to jump back up here because we've got increase in fuel costs. So don't forget about the increase in fuel costs, which will drive this opportunity for them. For example, the opportunity is Ford bought the technology to have a better SUV hybrid. So we need to, as interest in here, we need the opportunity is to enhance the hybrids and maybe an alternative fuel source. So as we look at this, we've got to figure out exactly where we're going from that perspective. Toyota is attractive to the youth. That's where they maybe should be looking at. And also saying, what can we do? They can create a car for the youth in the fact that they have a reputation for years with the young adult. So they should take that and build on that opportunity that they might have. So what about the threats that are out there? Well, they just recently had some recalls, as you all know. And the recalls were kind of unusual for Toyota. And that wasn't something that they were used to having. Also, their competition is getting tougher and tougher. Not just GM and Ford, but we've got Hyundai out there. We've got all of these other car makers who are trying very hard to create a product. And they are caught up in the economic factors. So some of the threats is the potential economic factors. And what would those be as we look at that? We should look at the fuel, the dollar is some of the things, the raw materials that they have, the rubber and steel that they have to think about, because those things are hard to get sometimes. And as the fuel prices go up, getting those converted and brought into their factories or something. So if you were looking at, and we'll start to work this through, if you were looking at our marketing and our strategy and our analysis, this would be one of the tools that we would use as a marketing individual in our workplace to sit down and really take the opportunity in your business to sit down with a team of people. This is hard to do when it's only us, but sit down and say, let's really think. There's nothing out here. And when you look at it, then you can easily try to figure out where your analysis is going for your market strategy. Okay, so now that you've gotten the three components of a formal marketing plan, we've got the market analysis, the competition, and the marketing strategy. We need to also look at how those things are focused on us. So we talked about Toyota. Let's talk about Nike a little bit, because Nike is an organization that has done an excellent job also of looking at the competition and its core competencies. So as we look at some of those things, we look at the existing competitors, which we did with Toyota also. But why does Nike have a competitive advantage? Well, once again, reputation. They have also looked at bringing in the right people at the right time to be doing some of their marketing for them. So we've got Michael Jordan's and the Air Jordans when Michael Jordan was big. We've got all of those. They look at their core competencies, and it applies to a variety of markets. And they made it as something, as we go back and we look what the core concepts was, I need shoes, but I want the Nike shoe, and I want it because my friend got the Nike shoes. So we have to look at some of those things in our strategy. And it can be difficult for competitors to imitate that. So as you look at some of these things in your strategies, you have to take, what's the competition have? When we do our SWOT analysis, what do they have? Where do we go with it? And so we've taken Toyota and we've taken Nike, and you can see where they have done and look at how well they've done with it. So the products that we look at, we've looked at everything as far as just an overview of the products with our SWOT analysis, etc. But there's another thing you have to think about. You have to be thinking about, as your product, you have to look at the name of the product, the name of our business, and how the packaging is going to do. One of the packaging you can think of is there's Starbucks. In Starbucks, when you see that little mermaid, you know it's Starbucks. When people are walking around with their cups, now they serve coffees and teas, but their packaging, they thought about that. So as you're looking at your market plan, you have to look at your strategy, and don't forget to include that packaging and how you get, and why were they selected. And then name recognition and the unique feature of the product, whatever it might be. And how are you going to get the distribution out there? By putting little shops on the corners? Or are you going to get out there by exporting it, or the World Wide Web, e-commerce? How are you going to go about it? And then pricing. And we'll go into pricing a little bit further down, but pricing is important too. And setting up a value for the customer that's acceptable to them, and knowing where your market is at. And your market can be segmented out by population, etc., and we'll go further into that. And then our promotional section in that marketing strategy is actually looking specifically at how are we going to advertise it. Are we going to be on the Brewers Network while the Brewers are playing for a cell phone? Maybe, maybe not. But you can see that Miller beer, Miller Lite, is definitely on during the Brewers. So you have to think about what type of people, what would they be watching on TV, where would they see, where would they be, what would they be listening to also. All right, so now we're going to jump into research, marketing research, and gathering information, which is always fun, and it sounds a little bit like a research paper. And when you look at a marketing staff, they're looking at a lot of different things, and it really is like putting a paper together. So you have to gather your information and reporting it. And how are you going to look at that? And also hiring professionals potentially, or maybe you won't hire professionals. And the steps in getting the marketing research going is identifying a need. What is the need? What is our product? And searching for a secondary data. Who has researched the product already? So we can actually save time if you go in and you run a search. So if I want an Android phone, you could go and create it. You could actually go in and run a search further on Android phones with touch screens. Collecting data and interpreting that data. So when we look at that, we want to analyze the customer market. So we want to look at the influences. And those influence could be cultural, social factors, or personal factors. And then we have to look at the psychological process. What's motivating the consumer? What is it? And what's their perception? And what am I going to learn from it? And what is my memory for it? So you kind of have to look at the psychological. Do I want it? Do I need it? What's motivating me? So let's take the Android phone. I recently purchased an Android phone, and what motivated me is I realized that if I didn't get onto text messaging, I probably would never talk to my adult children again, because we talk, but it's quicker and easier if you use text messaging. So I was motivated because I could see that I wouldn't be part of the culture that we're becoming. So those are things you have to analyze when you're doing your research. So what's the buying decision? You have to look at the buying decision. And the buying decision is involved with the problem recognition. So let's take me and my children. I wanted to communicate with them more frequently, and for them to find time throughout the week, that wasn't possible. So the problem recognition is communication. So I needed to get involved. My information searches, I wanted to look at a BlackBerry because I wanted a phone potentially that would get me access to my work calendar and access to the internet and access to my children. So we look even further. The evaluation of those alternatives for me personally was the fact that, I could have this be a multi-use tool, this cell phone. So then I can get access to work, home, email, and also to get to my children. And then my purchase decisions. Well, you see me taking my glasses on and off. I couldn't buy a BlackBerry because the screen is so small. I'd have to take my glasses on and off, and that wasn't very practical. So I needed an Android that had a larger print that I could enlarge. So those are some of the things and features. And then, did I like my post-purchase behavior? Did I like it? Did the people who sold me my cell phone, did they analyze whether or not I liked it? And they did. They sent out a survey so that they'd know what population is liking this particular phone. So those are things, as we look at our research and we talk about analyzing the consumer market, don't forget the influences, the psychological processes, and the buying decision in the process. So methods that we need to talk about as we analyze this is you can go and collect data different ways. Obviously by observing and surveys and personal interviews, and you can experiment. I know of a group one time who set up they wanted to create smoothies, and they got a little cart, they got permits, but they didn't know if they would be very good. So they actually went out, got their permits, and set up a little thing on the corner that didn't cost them very much, and said to people, should we leave our day jobs? And they had an analysis so they could collect that information. That was part of their collection of data, so that they could see whether or not their smoothies were worthwhile or not. So those are ways of doing it. You can also design a questionnaire, and that's very complicated, but you have to follow in this PowerPoint presentation on designing the questionnaire. You have to be very careful about your questionnaire and how you design it. And all of these points given on this particular PowerPoint are important, and the wording and the length and how you end the question and making sure you get the results you want. You want to know how people feel, so you want to make the survey sensitive enough. I'm not certain people are always great about surveys, but you can have them via mail, face-to-face, or you can put them on the web. This particular survey you also wanted, as you can see on the next slide, is you can actually get gender, age, their income, what part of the city they live in. You want to get the demographics also while you're getting that information. And then you have to interpret all of that data that we just talked about and interpret it and how we're going to put it together. And then deciding whether or not your research is too expensive. Because sometimes you could outsource all of this and somebody would get you that data that we've talked about. But in a small business, can you afford to do that? And when is it too expensive to do that? Well, this is an easy way on this particular slide when not to conduct a formal survey. You know, we may not have the resources. The opportunity for a new business product has passed. And you know what? Somebody else beat us to the punch. Or the decision to move forward is already made. So there's no need. The money's being spent. Sometimes people will make decisions and move forward, so maybe you aren't going to go with a formal research. Or you can't decide on the information you needed. You can't narrow it down to a product. Or the needed information already exists and in secondary information is available. So you could just do a lit search and you can get all of that information. And then the cost. It's all about cost. We want to make money, so don't forget to do that. So let's try to understand our types of markets. So we have different types of markets in here. We have the customer and the potential customers who we want, the ingredients, and the purchase power and the unsatisfied needs. And then you have market segmentation and the formal, the focused strategy, which is the type of competitive strategy that we need to involve with costs. So this is what we're going to talk about here in this next little section. So obviously, when we look at the market ingredients, we need a customer, we need them to have the ability to buy it, and they have to have a need. Very simple. When we look at market segmentation, there's different types of markets where there's a homogeneous market. And a homogeneous means there's no natural segmentation. Like everybody has to wear socks. There's whether you're 3 or 93. There's no gender difference or anything. So there's a homogeneous market. Then there's the diffused preference. And diffused is when you plot it out, it's all over the page. You really can't narrow it down. And then there's the cluttered preference. And the cluttered, clustered. And that means when you put it out on a chart, you would see clustered, and you know, ooh, this is the market that we should go to. We also have to look at the different segmentations that were in there and the variables. We have to look at the niche marketing. Is there a niche here because we have UW or we have Concordia University here? Is there a local market because we're out in a rural market? Or is there a customization? Is it honing in only on a certain type of customer, someone over 65, life insurance that they're looking for specifically? So you have to look at those different variables. And those segmentation variables are what we're talking about. Then we have the benefits variables. And those are what we're looking specifically for characteristics to distinguish this market segment to the benefit that's sought. So we talked about life insurance for the person over 65 or whatever who has a limited income. And maybe those people have just retired and they carried their life insurance through their employer and now they are needing it another way or form. And the demographics. We have to look at what type of customers are going to have the power to purchase our product. So now we have the unsegmented strategy where it's just a mass marketing, where you could just market to everyone. And multi-segmented is the strategy that recognizes different preferences of individual groups, and so you focus depending on there. And then the single segmented is a strategy that recognizes the existence of several distinct segments, but focuses mostly on the most profitable. So if we're looking at a Lexus that we're going to buy, you're not going to market that on the university campus. You're going to market it to people with incomes over, $80,000 a year. And it'll focus on the more mature individual that would have that income and be able to spend for that type of expensive car. So now you have this particular graph that shows you the changes in therapeutic practices. So we've got the market is for children between the ages of through the age of 90. So they've got physical therapy that they're looking at here. And they're looking, this is an example of an unsegmented strategy because it's going to hit all different age groups because of the product is a therapeutic massage. So everyone could benefit from that. And it would look at the sponsor and the mass media. This is an example of the next slide is an example of a multi-segmented marketing strategy, as you can see it. And this is an example of a single. And here they're talking about acne and stress reduction. So now we're jumping into forecasting, which is the final part of our lecture today. And our forecasting is looking at the sales forecast and the prediction of how much of the product can be sold within a given period of time. And before we jump into that, you have to be thinking about how are we going to utilize this market, and are we going to be on the e-commerce? And how are we going to be a pure click? And a pure click, remember, is something that's just on the web and there's no brick and mortar. Or are we going to be a brick and click, or are we just going to be a brick where people come in and buy our product and not? I can't imagine these days with the web and how quickly it has taken off from a sales perspective that you can't even think about going into business without having a website, without having a Facebook, etc., in order to be successful. You have to look at the limitations of forecasting. So is it a unique new business and the circumstances, the lack of familiarity with quantitative methods, and the lack of familiarity with forecasting processes. This is where I like to bring in that only 10% of all new products are truly innovative here. So you have to be looking, is this truly an innovation, or most of the activity that we have in the business is because it's devoted to improving our products. So you kind of have to look at it from that perspective. Dimensions of forecasting can be difficult, and this is an area that has you looking at where you're looking conditions that make forecasting easier. Is it an established business, experienced, etc.? So you can look at this particular slide and get a feeling. The next slide says, how are we going to even go about this? Because we have to break down a process in order to do this. And how are we going to go about doing this? So forecasting has to measure forecasting and demands and look at it from that perspective also. So here is a demographics and understanding the pricing. So here is an actual slide that forecasting the breakdown of a method in order to do it. In understanding the pricing, we have to decide as an organization if we are going to be a loss leader, start out, maybe put our product out there at a lesser price than the competition just to get it out there. That means we lead with a loss, knowing we're not going to make any money, and we can gradually improve the money. Or we can look at the cost center. Are we a cost center? Are we actually a cost center right here, and we are feeding to the next product that we might need to do? Or what is our break even? The next thing in understanding, the first section was understanding pricing, and the second is understanding the customer psychology and understanding the references, the quality, and the pricing cues. What are they going to pay for it? And then selling it. We need to sell it. Do we want survival and keep going? Do we want maximum profit? Or do we want to take the market share and then skimming it, or take the leadership? And then we have to adapt what we're doing throughout, because there's no marketing plan that you can't adapt, and you have to remember that. So you can do direct forecasting or indirect forecasting. And looking at those demands is what helps you in doing that. And in doing so, you'll find the forecasting as being measures of the market demand, estimating the current demand, the total market, the area market, and the industry sales, and then estimate the futures of that and the sales of staff and questionnaires. So the way you can estimate the future is understand your sales staff and ask them, and then also look at questionnaires to your consumers that have already done it. This closes up our presentation today. And in this presentation, hopefully you've walked away with understanding and describing a small business marketing, identifying the components of the formal marketing plan, which were the 3 parts, defining market segmentation, which we've discussed in length, and then explaining the different methods of sale forecasting, which is the direct and indirect. Thank you.